Let's actually get to South Africa. So I want to touch on, there's elections that I believe are scheduled for May 9th in South Africa, or May 8th rather. Here's the dynamic, and we're going to introduce you to a candidate in a second who kind of exemplifies why it's very hard to find a way out of the current situation. So, and go back into the Patreon archives, listen to the interview with Ronnie Kasrils. Ronnie Kasrils is one of my heroes. He's a co-founder of the armed wing of the African National Congress. He served as an intelligence minister in the Thabo Mbeki government. He served as deputy defense minister for Nelson Mandela, the great hero, the founding father, in many respects, of democratic South Africa. And he said, look, in the 1990s, when there was the transition from apartheid, essentially to really simplify a lot of things, the ANC won political freedom and sacrificed economic freedom. That was the deal on everything from literally keeping down violence during the transition. There was a huge amount of violence during the transition. Also listen to the reported history that we did with Mike Hanna. And also to keep funds flowing from international financial institutions, because the apartheid government had actually left the South African economy in really bad shape. We've been through a couple of cycles now. Thabo Mbeki was a technocrat. He was a fascinating and extremely complicated figure. He's known actually primarily for his dissonant views on AIDS, which were disastrous. But outside of that, and Zimbabwe and other areas where he sort of pivoted against perceptions of Western and Anglo-European and white power, oftentimes he was right about those, but I think adopted the wrong policies in responding to them. He actually embraced a total neoliberal agenda. He did things like GEAR, growth, redistribution, and development. So they did a massive amount of privatizations, austerity, and he boxed out labor and communist party factions, which are the there's a sort of grid, the ANC's partners, the African National Congress's partners. Then Jacob Zuma came to power, riding out those resentments, and he basically governed just in terms of like personal enrichment and a lot of serious corruption cases. And now you have Cyril Ramaphosa as president, a great ANC freedom fighter who made himself hundreds of millions of dollars in the private sector and was at least involved at some degree in the Marikana massacre in 2012, which we've covered on this show. He is basically trying to govern as a third way president. And he's trying to figure out a way to deliver land reform and deal with the crisis of unemployment and inequality, while at the same time basically being an instrument of Western capital. And then to the other candidates in this race are Julius Malema, and we'll do a little intro to Cyril Ramaphosa and Julius Malema in the coming weeks. But right here, I just want to tee off a little bit on Mmusi Maimane. Ben Fogel said he is the Beto O'Rourke of South Africa. This is an opening news package from 2016 with Talk to Al Jazeera, and you get a flavor of Mmusi Maimane watching this.
He rose quickly from political obscurity, emerging first as a mayoral candidate in Johannesburg and not long afterwards becoming leader of South Africa's main opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, in 2015. Mmusi Maimane thinks he's got the answers to South Africa's problems. At a time of economic and political turmoil, the ruling African National Congress, he says, is focused less on the needs of the people, more on the enrichment of its ruling elite.
Corruption in the ANC is not limited.
When he called for a vote in Parliament recently to impeach President Jacob Zuma for breaching the Constitution, Maimane struck a heavy blow in the opposition's campaign to overtake the party that he accuses of betraying the ideals of Nelson Mandela. But the vote failed, and the ANC is fighting back, using the rhetoric of race to discredit Maimane. They call him a sellout, a puppet of the rich, the black face of a white party. Mmusi Maimane points to his party's successful record in governing the Western Cape province, with Cape Town, the jewel, at its heart. He believes...
So Mmusi Maimane's Democratic Alliance is the sort of fusion of two legacies. One was the Progressive Party, also the Liberal Party, which was essentially the formal parliamentary opposition to the nationalist apartheid government, and they failed. They had some nice liberals. They actually were constructive in terms of legal services to political prisoners on Robben Island, like Nelson Mandela and Govan Mbeki and others. But obviously, South Africa was achieved through the broad liberation struggle of the African National Congress and the trade union movements and the South African Communist Party. That party, the origins of that party, basically fused with the remnants of the apartheid National Party and has emerged as basically a center-right, primarily white party. But they chose Maimane to head it because he has a lot of charisma and he kind of freely compares himself to Clinton and Obama.
The logos in that clip looked exactly like the Obama 2008 logo.
It's quite, and his advisor is Stan Greenberg from Greenberg Quinlan Rosner Research, is one of the biggest democratic global consulting firms on the planet. So you have that guy, he's running on austerity, neoliberalization, and so on. But hitting the ANC and corruption. Julius Malema is the left, but it's a lot of xenophobia and it's more populism than Marxism. And Ramaphosa is ANC corporatism. So we'll cover this more. I think the really hard thing is, and there's social movements like Fees Must Fall, which was big a couple years ago about getting rid of university tuition fees, and there is some independent trade unionist activity. I think the contradiction is that the ANC is in really bad shape, but the answer politically still comes from inside the ANC. But if you start, I mean, to the extent South Africa will get covered, I bet you'll see a lot of very nice coverage about Mmusi Maimane. That is a very Western geared, although Cyril Ramaphosa is as well. I mean, Cyril Ramaphosa is very smart, very technocratic, very wealthy, very capital oriented, but Mmusi's young. And he does have, he's clear, I mean, literally molded himself.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Or like a Macron's type style.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's got
style
more,
without substance.
He's less weird than Macron, though. He's very Beto-ish, actually. He really repeats a lot of platitudes. He's got a certain likability.
Kind of looks like a nerd.
He is a nerd. It's actually funny in that package. We don't have time to play it, but they play like good clips. Like he's kind of like he's campaigning, he's dancing, he's giving speeches, and he has some charisma. And then when he sits down, he's just like, it's very good to be here. Like he just, it all evaporates on inspection. There's also rolling blackouts that have been happening in South Africa as well. And there's conspiracies about whether or not
It's Maduro.
are those, yeah, those Maduro, well, are they engineered by forces that want greater privatization? Or are they engineered to undermine the ANC? It's very complicated, and we'll cover more of this. You've just watched a Michael Brooks show video, and you can watch all of our full main live shows every Tuesday night at around 7 p.m. Eastern Time, and subscribe to get all of the clips you want. We're covering the globe. We're focusing on international relations, the intellectual dark web. We're having fun. We're doing deep dives with a lot of amazing guests. Of course, become a patron for the whole thing at patreon.com/TMBS, or subscribe to this YouTube channel and help us keep growing and get that content out there. Subscribe below.